Working alone at night changes you. The empty parking lots, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the feeling that someone is watching you through the glass, but when you look up, there's no one there. The people in these 3 stories all worked the late shift. All of them were alone, and all of them experienced something they still can't explain. These are 3 true late-night work shift horror stories. Viewer discretion is advised. This happened to me in 2021 when I was working overnight at a 24-hour convenience store in rural Ohio. The job was simple. Ring up the occasional customer, stock the coolers, mop the floors. Most nights I'd see maybe 5 people total between midnight and 6 a.m. Truckers, mostly. People driving through. About a month into the job, I started noticing a pattern. Every night at exactly 4 a.m., a woman would come in. She always wore the same thing, a long beige raincoat, even when it wasn't raining. Her hair was wet, always wet, dripping onto the floor, and she'd walk straight to the back cooler, take out a single bottle of water, bring it to the counter, and pay with exact change, $1.09. Every time she never spoke, she never made eye contact. She just set the coins down, take her water, and leave. I figured she was a local, maybe a nurse getting off a shift, or someone with insomnia. People have their routines, but after a couple weeks I started to notice things. Her coins were always wet, cold and wet, like they'd been pulled out of a river, and she never actually drank the water. I started watching her on the camera after she left. She'd walk out to the edge of the parking lot, to the tree line, and she'd pour the entire bottle out onto the ground. Then she'd walk into the trees and disappear. One night I decided to say something. When she set down her $1.09, I said, "Long night?" She stopped. For the first time, she looked up at me. Her eyes were completely white. No iris, no pupil. Just white, like they'd been underwater for a long time. And she said, in a voice that sounded like it was bubbling up through liquid, "I'm so thirsty." Then she took her water and walked out. I didn't go back the next night, or ever. But before I quit, I asked my manager about her. I described the raincoat, the wet hair, the $1.09. He went pale. He told me that in 1998, a woman had driven her car off the bridge a half-mile down the road. At night, in the rain, they found her car in the river, but they never recovered her body. Her name was in the old police report he kept in the office. The report said she'd been on her way home from a night shift, the same shift I was working. I worked as an overnight security guard at an office building in downtown Denver for about 2 years. 12 floors, mostly empty at night. My job was to sit in the security office in the basement and watch the monitors. 16 screens, every floor, every entrance. It was the most boring job I've ever had. Until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday in February. Around 2 a.m., I was watching the monitors, half asleep, drinking my 3rd coffee. And on the monitor for the 7th floor, I saw a man walk across the hallway. Now, that's not unusual on its own. Sometimes employees work late, cleaning crews come through, but this guy was different. He was wearing an old-fashioned suit, like 1950s style, with a hat, and he walked with his strange, stiff gait. I figured maybe it was a late-working executive. I zoomed in. The man stopped in the middle of the hallway, and he turned, slowly, until he was facing the camera directly. Then he raised one hand and pointed at the camera, at me, and he started walking toward it. As he got closer to the camera, the screen started to distort. Static. And then, and I will never forget this, he leaned in close to the lens and I could see his face. Half of it was missing, like it had been burned away. One eye, half a mouth, exposed bone. The monitor went black. Then, one by one, the other monitors started going black too. Floor 12, floor 11, floor 10, like something was moving down through the building, killing the cameras as it went, floor by floor, getting closer to the basement, where I was sitting. When the monitor for the basement hallway, the hallway right outside my office, went to static, I heard footsteps. Stiff, dragging footsteps, coming down the hall toward the security office door. I did the only thing I could think of. I turned off the lights, got under the desk, and I called my supervisor. It rang and rang. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The door handle started to turn, and then my supervisor picked up, and the moment I heard his voice, the footsteps were gone. All 16 monitors flickered back on at once. Every floor, normal, empty, quiet. I told my supervisor everything. I expected him to laugh. He didn't. He told me that the building had been built in 1955, and that during construction there had been a fire on the upper floors. A construction worker had been trapped and died. The building was finished anyway, built right over where he'd died. Then my supervisor said something that made me quit on the spot. He said he shows up every February, always the same week. We've had 6 guards quit over the years for the same reason. Why do you think the night shift pays so well? I had it in my badge that morning. This is the one that still keeps me up at night. It happened on my last shift working at a big box retail store in 2019. I was a closing manager. My job on closing nights was to make sure all the customers were out, lock the doors at 11 p.m., count the registers, and do a final walkthrough of the store before setting the alarm and leaving. Usually I was completely alone from about 11:30 to midnight. That night, everything was normal. I locked the front doors at 11. I counted the registers, and around 11:40, I started my final walkthrough. The store was huge: groceries, electronics, clothing, home goods. I walked every aisle, checking for stragglers. Empty, 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 until I got to the back of the store, the seasonal section. There was a woman standing there, with her back to me, just standing perfectly still, facing the shelves. My heart sank. I figured she'd somehow gotten locked in. I walked up and said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, the store's closed. I'll have to let you out the front." She didn't respond. I got closer. "Ma'am?" Nothing. She just stood there, staring at the shelf. I walked around to face her, and there was no face, just smooth skin where the features should be. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just blank skin stretched over the front of her head. I stumbled backward and knocked into a display. When I looked up, she was gone, just gone. In the half second I'd looked away, I told myself I was exhausted, seeing things. I practically ran to the front of the store to set the alarm and leave. But when I got to the security panel, the screen was showing the camera feeds, and I froze. Because on every single camera, every aisle, every section, there she was, the faceless woman, standing in the middle of each aisle. At the same time, dozens of her, all facing the cameras, all of them slowly raising one arm to point. Not at the camera, at the exit, at the door I was standing next to, like they were telling me to leave. I set the alarm and I ran to my car, and I drove home and I called my district manager, and I quit over the phone at midnight. Here's the part one found out later. When I told a coworker what happened, she went quiet. Then she told me that the store had been built on the site of an old building that had burned down in the 1970s, a clothing factory. 8 women had died in that fire. They'd been locked inside. The exit doors had been chained shut to keep them working. 8 women, trapped, pointing at a door they could never reach. I think they weren't trying to scare me. I think they were trying to warn me to get out while I still could. 3 people, 3 late-night shifts, 3 things that should not have been there. If you work alone at night, in a store, an office, a gas station, anywhere, pay attention to the patterns. The regular who's a little too regular. The shadow that moves wrong. The coworker no one else remembers hiring. And if your gut ever tells you to leave, listen to it. If you have your own late-night shift story, leave it in the comments below. I read every single one, and the best ones might end up narrated in a future video. If you made it this far, subscribe and hit the bell for new scary stories every week. And whatever you do tonight, don't work the night shift alone.